Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Mystic Crystal ball python. The Mystic Crystal actually consists of two genes, the Mystic and the Special. And both the Mystic and the Special are actually in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, but they don't always make an all-white snake with blue eyes, which we consider a blue-eyed leucistic. As a matter of fact, the Mystic Crystal is kind of like a faded-out version of a blue-eyed leucistic, where you can actually see kind of a purplish color and quite a bit of pattern underneath. It's kind of like a translucent blue-eyed leucistic, and when you mix other genes in with the Mystic Crystal, you can actually get other genes to break through to make some really interesting combinations. So today I want to jump over the internet and I want to show you the potential of the Mystic Crystal ball python. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on morphmarket.com and I want to start with the two genes that make up the Mystic Crystal. And first I want to start with the Special. This is what the Special looks like. And believe it or not, the Special almost looks exactly like the Mystic, which makes this project pretty confusing. The Mystic and the Special are real similar. And the Mystic Crystal is actually an allelic complex. So you take the Mystic Crystal, you breed it to something else, half the offspring come out as Special, half come out as Mystic. And kind of the trick is trying to figure out which ones are Specials and which ones are Mystic, and they both look really not that impressive. They look almost like a normal ball python, which is kind of crazy. And with a trained eye, you can actually pick them out. Usually with the Special, you have quite a bit of white coming up the belly. You can kind of see like some flaming coming up between the alien heads, and usually you see a little bit of white on the bottom part of the alien heads coming up. It's a pretty tough gene to actually kind of pick out. As a matter of fact, over here on Morph Market, I've seen a lot of snakes listed as Special/Mystic because a lot of people really can't tell the difference between them. And take a look at this. This is one version of a Special. Here is the Mystic. Take a look at this. This almost looks exactly the same with a little bit of flames coming up the sides and kind of the white. And I've actually seen some normals, and as a matter of fact, I actually have some hets that are het for some recessive genes that kind of have this white coming up the sides. So it's really difficult to tell which one is which. And I'd say for the most part, it seems like most of the Mystics that I look at have kind of more of a high contrast and maybe a little bit darker of a background, although they can really be variable. It seems like there's different lines of Mystics and different lines of Special, which can really confuse things. So if you actually take a Mystic and you breed it with a Special, this is what you get. You get the Mystic Crystal. Take a look at this. And for being, both genes in the blue-eyed leucistic, this is pretty amazing that you actually get this much color and pattern coming through. It's almost hard to believe that these are both in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, and most people wouldn't even realize that this is actually kind of a version of a blue-eyed leucistic. Pretty crazy. And I was kind of trying to look at the eyes on this. I was wondering if it actually had blue eyes, and you can almost see that it has a little bit of blue coming through. Really hard to tell in this picture. And as a matter of fact, the Mystic Crystal is pretty variable from one to the other. This is probably the darkest one I've seen with the most color, and here's another one that is really faded out. Take a look at this. This is super faded for a Mystic Crystal. It's kind of an interesting combination. As a matter of fact, if you're wondering if if you actually look at the two genes, the Special and the Mystic, and you see a combination like this, and you're wondering, hey, are these in the blue-eyed leucistic complex? Kind of a neat trick that you can do is take either one of those genes and combine it with lesser. It's lesser combined with any other gene in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, as far as I know, always makes an all-white snake with blue eyes. And I actually pulled up a couple here. Take a look at this. This is a lesser and a Special. So this is also called a lesser crystal, which is like the lesser version of a crystal. Pretty amazing that you get an all-white snake with blue eyes. So, you breed it with lesser, you get a white snake, then you know for sure that the Special is actually in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. And I actually did the same thing over here. Take a look at this. This is the Mystic lesser. So this is the combination of the Mystic with the lesser. Both are in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, and if you actually work the right genes together, you can actually tease out what we call the blue-eyed leucistic, which is the all-white snake with the bright blue eyes. So this is kind of an interesting anomaly. If you actually mix Mystic with Mojave, you get kind of a purplish color snake. So the Mojave is also in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, and the Mojave is a lot stronger as far as making white snakes. If you actually breed two Mojaves together, you get the Super Mojave, which is an all-white snake with blue eyes. And if you actually mix it together with Mojave, you get what is known as the Mystic Potion, which is kind of an interesting common name for this snake. And take a look at this. This is what we call the kind of the original crystal. This is where we kind of get the spin-off of the Mystic Crystal from. So if people are talking about crystals, they're talking about the Mojave and the Special. And that's where we kind of have, you know, the Mystic and the Special is the Mystic Crystal, and the Lesser Special is the Lesser Crystal. It's kind of all a play on what we call the crystal between the Mojave and the Special. So I wanted to show you some other genes mixed into the Mystic Crystal so you can see kind of the effect that they have. You know, being in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, both genes are in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. You can actually work some other genes in there and get some effect. I'd say it's a really visually dominant combination because it's kind of, you know, technically it's really like a faded out blue-eyed leucistic. And usually if you take the all-white snake and you work in other genes, it completely masks all the other genes. So we're starting with kind of a version of the all-white snake, and we'll just kind of see what an effect some of these genes have on that blue-eyed leucistic. So here is the pastel, and when it comes to probably the most common gene in all of ball pythons, the pastel is probably number one. The pastel is really variable. Sometimes it can be kind of a browned out yellow, and sometimes it can be a really super bright yellow, and in most cases they're all yellow with kind of a jumbled up pattern. If you actually make a super pastel, you can increase the brightness and jumble up the pattern even more. It's pretty awesome. So here's what happens if you work pastel into the Mystic Crystal. Take a look at this, and this is probably the most yellow I've seen coming out of any Mystic Crystal. As a matter of fact, this one is listed as probable yellow belly, and I'm starting to think this one probably has yellow belly in it, because if you combine yellow belly with pastel, usually what happens is you really intensify the yellow color in the combinations. And let me tell you, you usually start with a really flashy snake mixing pastel and yellow belly, and this completely kind of fades it out and even dominates the pastel yellow belly. Pretty amazing. So here is the spider ball python. The spider is a really visually impressive gene. It's also visually dominant. You mix the spider in with other combinations and it pretty much always breaks through. And a lot of times you can actually see kind of the spider web pattern breaking through most of the combos. Really amazing snake. And a lot of spiders have this bright gold color. That is pretty amazing. And usually with the spider you have this crazy pattern on the head. Makes a really crazy head stamp. So here's what happens if you work spider into the Mystic Crystal. Take a look at this. This even dominates the spider, which is pretty amazing. You almost can't even see like the spider pattern barely breaking through the top. Maybe a little bit right along the back, but you can definitely tell it is a Mystic Crystal. Really strong influence, really visually dominant. You can see a little bit of a head pattern coming through from the spider. So here is the blackhead. If you want to break through a combination with a dark morph, let me tell you, blackhead is number one. Blackhead, out of all the dark morphs, it's probably the darkest of the dark. And if you actually work blackhead into other combinations, you can really darken the background. And it almost looks like a normal ball python, but you can notice on the blackhead it has a really jet black background. It usually has a really super black head. As a matter of fact, if you actually mix blackhead in with like spider, where it changes the head pattern, or spot nose, it usually really changes the head pattern. A lot of times blackhead will completely dominate the head patterns and just kind of blacken out the head. So here's what happens if you work blackhead into the Mystic Crystal. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing that the blackhead actually can influence it quite a bit. In a lot of combinations it'll actually really make it jet black, like an ink black. You can definitely tell the Mystic Crystal has a definite influence over the blackhead. It even lightens the head. Pretty amazing that it actually darkens, lightens the blackhead. Pretty amazing. So here's the last one I wanted to show you. This is the Lemon Blast, and usually the Lemon Blast is a really visually strong combination. It's actually the combination of a pinstripe and the pastel. It makes for some really impressive combinations. As a matter of fact, I've actually worked some bamboo jeans in with the Lemon Blast. If you actually have a bamboo pastel pinstripe, you get almost like a metallic looking snake. It's pretty crazy. And here's what happens if you work the Lemon Blast into the Mystic Crystal. Take a look at this. It even dominates the Lemon Blast. Pretty amazing. And you can actually see in this one, actually you see it kind of switch to this picture. It might be a little bit better if you can actually see it. And actually, you can actually see the pattern of the Lemon Blast kind of breaking through this combination. Pretty amazing that it even dominates the Lemon Blast. So, you know, I'd say when it comes to Mystic Crystals, it's kind of like a pseudo blue-eyed leucistic complex where, you know, it really is hard to get other genes to kind of break through, but you can actually make some really amazing, kind of subtle, almost like giving your snake like a creamy looking appearance. Some of these snakes, especially when you add blackhead, I think that is probably my favorite Mystic Crystal. Alright, so it is time for the question of the day. And Oliver Holland asks, what got you into breeding snakes? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, it's kind of an interesting story. It was about 6 years ago. I was actually working as a chemist in a laboratory, and I was actually on lunch, and someone came up to me in the lunchroom and showed me their phone, and they were like, hey, check this out. The snake sold for $45,000. I could not believe that a scaleless head, when I first started, was selling for $45,000. I started watching Morph Market every single day, and believe it or not, they were posting the scaleless heads for $45,000, and within a week they would sell. It was insane. And I was like, what in the world is going on? I had no clue that this was going on with snakes. It was pretty amazing. And after I really started digging into ball pythons and learning about all the morphs and the combinations, and kind of the thing that really got me really interested in ball pythons is, for example, you can actually take a pastel and a pinstripe, breed them together to get a Lemon Blast with both genes in them, and then you can take that, breed it to something else, and separate each individual gene in its pure form, which is really unusual. You really can't do that with like dogs or anything else. You know, you end up with, you know, crossbreed animals, and you can never breed out the pure individual genes. And I thought that was like the #1 main potential with ball pythons, that you can have pretty much an unlimited number of genes mixing together and separating them out in their pure form. You know, I felt like when I got into ball pythons, I was like, where was I 10 years ago? I missed the boat. And come to find out, I'm kind of, you know, I kind of look at it completely different now, because 10 years ago, everything was so expensive. You know, a lot of people were, you know, kind of doing it for the money back then, where you could make a lot of money really quick, and you could actually lose a lot of money too. And now it seems like all the prices have really come down, and there's so many genes on the market. You can kind of almost do it like being an artist now. You can like take all these different genes, mix them together, and there's still a really high demand for ball pythons. You know, you can make some pretty good money on the side. You can actually support your hobby. You know, you don't break the bank working with animals like you do, you know, with a lot of other animals, which is probably the coolest part. And kind of the weird thing is, when I first started in snakes, I was getting ball pythons and king snakes, and I actually picked up this Australian Woma python that was a full-size adult. I actually had it shipped in the mail, and it actually got all beat up in the mail and came to my house. And I kept that snake in a glass aquarium here in my reptile room, and that thing was so mean, it would actually strike the glass trying to bite me from across the room. I thought it was going to break the glass, and that thing was so terrifying. I could not believe it. I was like, what am I actually doing with snakes in my basement that want to kill me? And let me tell you, my first experience with snakes was kind of crazy with that Australian Woma python. And believe it or not, I actually moved it into an ARS 8018 tub, and that thing instantly tamed down in a dark tub after I got it out of that glass aquarium. But let me tell you, I almost got out of snakes because of that crazy Australian Woma python. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.